In this episode, I dial the weights back an eensy-weensy little bit and everything feels just right. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Project Pilsen. I just finished my equipped deadlift session for the week and it went pretty good actually. So after Wednesday, the quack show that it was, I had a good conversation with Mike. We kind of decided how to move forward with training, and we've reverted a little bit to some strategies that we used in the last training block that went so well, and dialed the intensity back a little bit. I think one thing that I've noticed from this block dealing with higher intensities, last block's average intensity was probably about 75%, this block 80 to 85%. So with that, I think what happened was I peaked a little bit faster. I was certainly more aggressive with most of my load selections with, having worlds in the back of my head. And that led to me I think, peaking a little bit early. So Mike and I are doing our best to maintain the peak, and I think so far it's going really well. So yesterday's baseline volume session, everything was dialed back a little bit. Today's session in my suit for my deadlifts was dialed back a little bit. Not a whole lot. I pulled 3 singles, each one at 372.5 kilos. First one moved about a 7.5, second one at an 8, and the last one at about an 8.5 and 9. I pulled on the Alico bar today as well, which tore my thumbs up a little bit, and as you can see, I got a little tear on my finger there, but that's not really that big of a deal. But for 3 good pulls with heavyweight and a little bit of a hold on each one to make sure that I'm comfortable gripping and holding on to that kind of weight on an Alico bar, because that's more than likely what we're going to be using in the check here. So yeah, did all that and thumbs feel pretty good. So the reps this week, the triple was at 357.5 kilos. So again, that moved really well. It felt comparable to the 363 that I pulled last week, and it's only about a 5 kilo difference. So I think I'm maintaining my strength levels pretty much on par with where I was. And if that trend continues, I think we'll be in a good spot for the competition coming up. Moving on from there, I just did some baseline volume stuff. My bench is dialed back. I was doing 140 kilos for sets of 5, and then when I realized and double checked the programming, sets of 4. And those moved really well today. The biceps feeling okay. Shoulders are a little bit beat up. I think that was in part because of my first exposure this training cycle to wide grip bench. We opted to switch a couple more supplementary kind of exercises, and that led to a little bit of tightness kind of in my pec tendon there, but nothing unbearable and nothing certainly unexpected. From there, finished off with some baseline volume on my squat, and that's been dialed back as well. I was doing 240 for 4s before, and today was 227.5 for 5s. So that felt kind of like it should. I think I was rating it in the sort of 7.5 to 8.5 range, and the hip felt really good today. I didn't feel too loose or too misgrooved coming out of the bottom on each rep, so that's a good thing. So we got a question here from Nature Favor for our question of the day today. And he or she is asking about my shoes and whether or not I use a heel when I squat. And I know I've gotten a number of questions about this before, so I'm just gonna kind of do a quick run through of the shoes that I use. I myself am personally very high maintenance. My fiance makes fun of me for it all the time. But I have 1 pair of shoes for each lift because I need that for some reason. My squat shoe of preference is the Titan Contender. It's got a 1/2 inch effective heel, and it's a boot style, which I really like for heavier equipped stuff. I feel like it gives me a little bit more ankle stability and ankle support by being a little bit of a higher top. And it has kind of a mix, for me anyways, it's halfway between a full 3/4 inch effective heel and a flat sole. So to me, that seems to work really, really well. And I just like how rigid and stable they are. You're kind of really, really rooted in the ground. There's no give in the sole really in any way. Downsides of these would be that they're expensive, and I believe they make them to order, so it took me a while to get these. For my bench press, I use a Do-Win. I've talked about these shoes before. This is a 3/4 inch effective heel. This is what I used to squat in. And these were from that website, weightliftingshoes.ca. They're super old school. I think you still have to send them a money order and a foot tracing to get your shoes. But if you want a good pair of lifting shoes, I've been using these for almost 5 years now. The only thing I've had to replace is the laces. And other than that, they're still in super, super good shape. So really basic, but I think they only cost me about 90 bucks, which compared to a lot of the lifting shoes out there right now is pretty cheap. And lastly, I used to deadlift in Chuck Taylors. When I switched to sumo, I found they weren't grippy enough. So I was finding my feet sliding, and anybody who's been watching the channel for long enough will have seen that time I almost dropped 800 pounds on my foot. So what I use instead now is the Szabo deadlift shoes. They were a little bit tight to start with, so I was a little apprehensive about that, but they stretched out really, really nice. They again have a high top, and they have 2 different straps, one across the midfoot, one across the ankle, and I find especially in sumo where there's so much lateral pressure, that tends to give me a lot of stability. They also have kind of a cool, funky little pattern on the bottom, which seems to give me a lot of stickiness, a lot of grip on the floor. I don't find my feet slide or roll, pretty well rooted in. And another plus for me is that it's a very, very thin sole. And when you're dealing with a max deadlift, the difference between a Chuck Taylor sole and something that's maybe half as thick could make a missed or made lift. The only complaint I have about the Szabos is the eyelets are rusting a little bit from just general use. Obviously, you're gonna sweat into your shoes. And the other one, this is my left shoe, my right shoe, actually had one of the eyelets tear out. So I have to kind of skip a lace and kind of go around it like that. Also, the laces they give you with them are super, super short. So if you're gonna get some of these, get some longer laces. Other than that, super, super solid shoe. You can't beat the price. I think they're 70 or 80 bucks. And for a lifting shoe, they're damn good. Anyways, guys, that's it for this week. Hopefully things are back on track. I'm feeling good. I'm hopeful for the future, hopeful for this last week of training before Pilsen. Hit like if you liked it, subscribe, stay tuned, leave your questions below, and we'll see you guys in the next one.